Even though we probably know better, I think most of us would do a lot of horrible things if it meant we could become more attractive. For example, a large percentage of the things I've done in my life can be attributed with some degree of attenuation to the desire to be more attractive to women. The idea of becoming more physically attractive is intoxicating, to the point where many people fantasize about having a perfect body, having perfect hair, being fantastically rich, and having to beat off potential mates with a stick. Of course, most of us know that such a life wouldn't be all that great. Reality is different. We know about how beauty is fading, how constant attention would be exhausting, and how there's no way to be attractive to everyone at once. Still, it feels good to imagine being attractive, and we still vainly pursue the concept of physical perfection, even if we know we might not achieve it, and even if we know it wouldn't be good for us. Some people seem to have achieved this level of perfection, or at least might have come really close to it, if only for a brief, fleeting moment. One example of such a person is Connor Murphy.
I made it out. I'm out of the psych ward. I'm out of the
Connor Murphy, no relation to Jack Murphy as far as I can tell, is an Instagram and YouTube sensation, largely famous for having a chiseled body that women drool over. Connor allegedly started bodyweight exercises at 13, making progress from ages 15 to 17, but plateauing until he turned 20. Connor allegedly doubled down on his weightlifting efforts at 20, pushing hard to go from his natural 185-pound self to become a chiseled 205-pound Adonis. Many people openly question whether Murphy achieved his chiseled body using steroids. Now, as far as I can tell, the likelihood of him going hardcore in traditional steroid regimens is quite low. His proportions are normal, his gains are reasonable for the time frame described, and he doesn't exhibit any of the typical signs of steroid use, such as gynecomastia, acne, or so-called boulder shoulder. However, this doesn't rule out the possibility that he's used other performance-enhancing supplements or drugs. It's very possible that he's getting help from somewhere. All the same, Murphy deserves immense respect for having the discipline and self-control to maintain the low body fat that he has. Honestly, part of the inspiring thing about Murphy is that he's realistic. Most of us could achieve a body like his if we were willing to put in the insane amount of diet and exercise required to get there. Around 2015 to 2016, Murphy made a name for himself by doing prank videos, where he'd basically prance around looking for excuses to wow women with his body. Now the trick here is pretty obvious. It's the same approach that the man on the street interviewers use to find comedy. Murphy finds ditzy women who want to be on camera, and they're probably drunk. He comes up with some excuse to look hot in front of them, and goads them into a kiss. The efforts that are successful are then put into a YouTube video, whereas the failures remain on the cutting room floor. The resulting video makes Murphy look like he's catnip in a world full of cats. Murphy's explosive popularity is similar to that of many bodybuilders of this era. He was selling an image. Arguably, viewers of Murphy's content wanted to be Connor Murphy, the kind of chiseled guy that could get kisses by taking off their shirt in a crowded street. Even though most people likely knew deep down inside that this was all staged, the fantasy was intoxicating. So around 2016, Murphy was at the absolute peak of his game. He was an Adonis-like 20-something that had the phenomenal genetics, workout ethic, and good looks to be wildly successful on YouTube, which fed his ego and put him at the top of the world. His cringy prank videos sent him from Austin straight to LA with tons of money in his pockets. About 4 years later, in 2020, when Murphy was in his late 20s, Murphy's life began to fall apart. Approaching 2020, Murphy's perfect chiseled body had shown its very first crack. Murphy was very obviously losing his hair. He didn't directly address it at the time, but the elephant was in the room. The real problem started with a video that is, by and large, a cry for help. Murphy seemed profoundly sad, talking about his parents and his sister's suicide attempt. No.
What is happening? I've gone literally mentally insane over the past few days. I don't understand. I've hit my mental breaking point.
At some point after this video, Murphy was allegedly institutionalized for some period of time. Sometime after potentially being released from the aforementioned institution,
I made it out. I made it out. I'm out of the psych ward. I'm out of the
Murphy posted an apology video blaming his previous video on an ayahuasca trip. Blowing off the cry for help is little more than an act.
Yes, I'm okay, and I'm sorry it took me so long to tell you.
It seemed that Murphy was, in fact, potentially abusing ayahuasca. he apparently participated in an ayahuasca ceremony in Joshua Tree National Park in May 2020, after which he claimed to have gone, quote, from a spiritually frustrated YouTuber to a guru with complete experiential understanding of the universe. Murphy's next few videos came out in rapid succession, and they were all extremely disturbing. In one video, he was allegedly drinking his own semen. In another video, he's allegedly drinking his own urine in public. In another video, he was allegedly experimenting with homosexual activity.
And everybody goes on Instagram and sees Nick with a guy. Isn't that great? Grandma, Anthony, everybody, Allie, Will, everybody sees my son in a gay act or a potential gay act.
Murphy then apparently decided to go on a 40-day fast.
Alright guys, so yes, I'm doing a 40-day fast.
I and many of my friends watched it, mostly out of amusement. During his live stream 40 days, as far as I can tell, Murphy was hiding from his parents in what appeared to be an Airbnb or some other form of a temporary apartment. During that process, he was occasionally receiving calls from mental health services.
Yeah, so my team is sometimes referred by the police to see if people are interested in mental health services. And so we were just calling to see if you're interested in that and that kind of thing.
Interesting. Why would I be interested in mental health services? Why did the police say that?
Moreover, during that fast, Murphy would occasionally wear a red LED helmet and stare at the sun, presumably in a vain attempt to help stimulate hair growth. The next thing you know, Murphy's got an OnlyFans account, which might have been a queer-baiting scam. I don't care enough to do the research on that one. And he's hanging out with apparently homeless transgender individuals, having them sit on his lap and stare into his eyes for some indeterminate spiritual purpose. Murphy was at one point justifying a lot of his behavior through the lens of spirituality, and even claimed at one point to be a doctor of spirituality thanks to what, as far as I can tell, is a diploma mill degree. At some point, Murphy also claimed that Ethan Klein from H3H3 was somehow involved in a child sexual abuse ring.
Connor Murphy is my god.
You know, Ethan, don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Though it seems that that allegation was likely dreamed up on ayahuasca. Also, for a brief period in 2021, Connor Murphy became a bit obsessed with the character Connor Murphy in the play Dear Evan Hansen, fixating on the fact that the character commits suicide.
So why am I making this video? One, because I'm the second coming of Jesus Christ and I need you to listen to me. Please send this to all the news outlets that you can possibly think of. Drama Alert, Scarce, Philip DeFranco, and tell them that I am evil. Second of all, I'm doing a play for mental health awareness. It is called Dear Evan Hansen. I'm playing off the play Dear Evan Hansen because reality is a play. It is God's play.
Murphy also claimed to have found new parents after being disowned.
Guys, I'm sitting here, I'm about to get so emotional because I'm so grateful. As you guys know, my parents disowned me for being gay during Gay Pride Month.
Though this seemed somewhat short-lived, and he eventually began to interface with his parents again.
So, my parents they're the best parents in the world. They have raised me better than any parents possibly could. They have led me.
Throughout many of these zany antics, it seemed that Murphy was still getting his hands on DMT, and possibly abusing it to an extreme degree.
Love of mine.
As of early 2022, Murphy is now seemingly living in Dallas, has shaved his head bald, claims to be gay, and has been accused of rape by an ex-girlfriend. Murphy has made some attempts at getting back into his original prank content, but it's clearly a stale concept that doesn't quite resonate, particularly after all of his previous behavior. Now, on the surface level, Murphy's story is about him as a bodybuilding Icarus, flying too close to the sun. Murphy's entire world was built up around being attractive, popular, and making videos that were, for a brief moment in the 2010s, somewhat relevant. The second a crack appeared in his ego through the loss of his hairline, Murphy's entire world seemed to collapse around him. Murphy's descent into ayahuasca rituals, spiritualism, and other odd behavior might be seen as the desperate thrashings of a dying ego. Along these lines, lots of people want to keep the story simple. Murphy lost his hair from steroids, began to panic, and then lost his mind due to the abuse of ayahuasca. And on some level, that story is true. Everything that I just described actually happened. But digging more deeply, there's much more about Murphy we should consider. It's very possible that Murphy might have developed schizophrenia. After all, it's not uncommon for it to show up in your mid to late 20s. As such, it's very possible that Murphy is a victim of his own brain chemistry, rather than being a victim of his own ego. It's also very possible that Murphy is at least partially a victim of falling into the wrong crowd. It's not particularly clear who introduced him to ayahuasca ceremonies or facilitated his weird spiritual behavior. Moreover, Murphy's odd YouTube videos are certainly facilitated by his mental state, but they might also be a good old-fashioned capitalistic attempt to figure out how to remain relevant in 2022. Particularly in a world where kissing prank videos just don't cut it anymore. In fact, viewed in a charitable light, much of Murphy's behavior could be considered an attack on his critics. A sort of, well, if you call me a clown, I might as well put on clown makeup and clown shoes sort of approach. Now, here's my point. We want Murphy to be a bodybuilding Icarus, more than he really is. Even if for only 2 years or so, Murphy got to live a lifestyle, being attractive, relatively well-loved, sexually desirable, that many people want but very few people experience. Deep down inside, many of us likely relish the fact that Murphy is no longer a representation of what we could be if we really tried. His fall helps us believe that even if we really did try, we would inevitably have a downfall at some point and thus shouldn't even bother trying in the first place. It's a sort of crabs in the bucket mentality. We saw someone succeed and do better than us, so we relish the opportunity to rip them down from their ornate column and punish them for the enjoyment of something we could never have. There's another individual, by the way, who I think we like to push down below us rather than pull them down to our level, but I'll save that topic for a future video. In enjoying Murphy's fall, we put on blinders to the big picture. Much of what we're seeing now is likely a toxic sludge born from mental illness, dangerous communities, dangerous psychedelic drugs, and a desire to remain relevant on a fast-moving content platform. In other words, relishing in Murphy's mental illness reflects poorly on us. It shows our emotional weakness, how we're willing to ignore someone's very real difficulties when we perceive that person to be superior to us in some way. Suffice to say, I hope Murphy is able to, for lack of a better term, right his ship. I hope he's able to find a way to live healthily, get his mental state in order, and still maintain some semblance of fame on YouTube. I just suspect it's going to be very hard for him to do so when even mainstream publications are childishly relishing in his downfall. With all that being said, thank you very much for watching this video. As I've mentioned before and I'll mention again, I'm still cutting my teeth on my first few videos, and I would appreciate any feedback you can provide, both good and bad. I'd appreciate your thoughts on Connor Murphy and what you think might have been his problem and the ways in which he could come back today. And if you like this kind of content, I would always appreciate it if you could share it in any way you like. Thank you.